In the sun-scorched Valley of the Kings, a golden scarab amulet, cursed with ancient warnings, claims its first victim, Dr. Harold Grayson, found dead beside his discovery. Was it the curse's wrath or a murderer's hand? Hercule Poirot, the master detective, steps into a web of ambition, obsession, and betrayal. A rival archaeologist with a grudge, a curator desperate to claim the relic, and a silent guide hiding his own motives, each holds a secret. As poison is uncovered and clues unravel, Poirot's gray cells race to expose a killer cloaked in the myth of a curse. Will he unmask the truth before the desert claims another life? Chapter 1. The Desert's Secret. The sun blazed mercilessly over the Valley of the Kings, its heat shimmering across the ochre sands like a mirage of molten gold. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the climate, stepped from the rattling motorcar with a grimace, adjusting his straw hat to shield his fastidious eyes. His polished shoes, an affront to the dust, crunched against the earth as he surveyed the archaeological dig sprawled before him. Tents dotted the landscape, their canvas flapping in the dry wind, while workers moved with purpose, their voices a low hum of Arabic and English. Poirot's mustache quivered faintly, not from the heat, but from the faint thrill of a puzzle awaiting his unparalleled gray cells. Dr. Harold Grayson, a man whose reputation for uncovering Egypt's secrets rivaled his flair for theatrics, had summoned Poirot 3 days prior. His letter, penned in a hurried scrawl, spoke of a discovery: a golden scarab amulet, inscribed with hieroglyphs that whispered of a curse. Grayson, ever the showman, had begged Poirot's counsel, fearing not the supernatural but the human greed such a relic might ignite. Now, as Poirot stood at the edge of the excavation, Grayson's fears had taken a darker turn. The archaeologist was dead, found that morning beside the very amulet he had unearthed. His body stiff under the relentless sun, Poirot's guide, a wiry Egyptian named Khalil, gestured toward a shaded tent where the body lay. "The workers. They say it is the curse," Khalil murmured, his eyes darting to the horizon as if expecting spectral retribution. Dr. Grayson, he touched the scarab, and now. He trailed off, shaking his head. Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Mon ami," he said, his voice crisp, "curses are for those who lack imagination. Hercule Poirot seeks the truth, not superstition." Inside the tent, the air was stifling, heavy with the scent of dust and something sharp or bitter almonds. Perhaps Grayson's body lay on a cot, covered by a sheet saved for his face, which bore a rictus of agony. His eyes, wide and glassy, stared at the canvas ceiling. Nearby, on a wooden table, rested the scarab amulet, its golden surface catching the dim light, its hieroglyphs etched with unsettling precision. Poirot's gaze lingered on it, but his attention shifted to the living, who hovered nearby. Their faces a study in grief, fear, and something less definable. 3 figures stood out among the gathered. Dr. Evelyn Carver, a woman of sharp intellect and sharper ambition, stood with arms crossed, her auburn hair pinned tightly beneath a sun hat. Her rivalry with Grayson was no secret. Her own dig, a mile away, had been overshadowed by his find. Reginald Holt, curator of the Cairo Museum, fidgeted with his monocle, his thin frame taut with nervous energy. His obsession with securing relics for his institution was matched only by his disdain for foreign scholars like Grayson. And then there was Amir, the local guide, lean and watchful, his dark eyes betraying nothing as he stood apart, blending into the tense shadows. Inspector Mahmoud, a stout man with a weary air, approached Poirot, mopping his brow. "A tragedy. Mr. Poirot," he said. "Dr. Grayson was not young. The heart it gives out under such strain, yes. The workers speak of curses, but I see no crime." Poirot's eyes, bright and unyielding, met Mahmoud's. "Monsieur l'inspecteur," he replied, "the heart may fail, but the nose of Hercule Poirot does not. There is a scent here that suggests more than nature's hand." He knelt beside Grayson's body, his movements precise, almost delicate. No wounds marred the archaeologist's frame, but the faint bitter almond odor clung to his lips. Poirot's gaze drifted to a metal canteen on the table, its cap loosened, a faint residue visible within. "This," he murmured, "is where we begin." He rose, his small frame commanding the tense attention. The suspect's carver Holt, Emir watched him, each face a mask hiding its own secrets. Poirot turned to Mahmoud, his voice low but firm. "We must speak with those who were near Dr. Grayson this morning. The truth, it hides in their words, their gestures, their silences." As the inspector nodded, Poirot's mind was already at work, sifting through the motives that swirled. Like the desert dust, ambition, possession, resentment. The scarab's curse was a tale for the credulous, but murder was a story Poirot knew well. He adjusted his hat, his gray cells humming with purpose, ready to unravel the desert's deadly secret. Chapter 2. The scene of death. The air inside the canvas tent was thick with heat, a stifling shroud that pressed against Hercule Poirot's meticulously tailored suit as he stood over the body of Dr. Harold Grayson. The Valley of the Kings, with its ancient whispers and unyielding sun, seemed to hold its breath, as if the very sands awaited Poirot's verdict. The tent, hastily erected to shield the grim spectacle from prying eyes, was a microcosm of tension. Workers hovered at the entrance, their murmurs of curses and divine wrath filtering through the canvas, while the three principal figures of interest lingered within, each a study in guarded composure. Poirot's mustache twitched, his keen eyes darting from the corpse to the golden scarab amulet resting on a nearby table, its hieroglyphs glinting with an almost malevolent allure. Death, he mused, was rarely so theatrical without human orchestration. Dr. Grayson lay on a low cot, a sheet drawn up to his chin, his face frozen in a grimace that spoke of sudden, violent agony. His eyes, wide and unseeing, stared upward, as if the last thing he beheld was some unseen terror. Poirot knelt beside the body, his movements precise, almost reverential, as he examined the scene with the care of an artist studying a canvas. The archaeologist's hands were clenched, the fingers curled as if grasping at life itself. No blood stained his clothing, no blade's mark marred his flesh, yet the faint, unmistakable scent of bitter almonds hung in the air, a scent Poirot knew well, the signature of cyanide. "Mon pauvre ami," he murmured, "your heart did not fail you. Something far more sinister did." He rose, his small frame commanding the tent's dim interior, and turned his attention to the table where the scarab amulet lay, encased in a simple wooden box, its lid propped open. The relic seemed to pulse with an eerie vitality, its golden surface catching the slanted light filtering through the tent's seams. The hieroglyphs, etched with precision, told a story of ancient warnings, or so the workers claimed. Poirot, however, was not swayed by tales of supernatural vengeance. His gray cells, those tireless engines of deduction, sought a more earthly explanation. Inspector Mahmoud, the local authority, stood near the tent's entrance, his broad face slick with perspiration as he fanned himself with a notepad. "Mr. Poirot," he said, his tone heavy with the resignation of a man accustomed to bureaucratic simplicity. "This is no mystery. Dr. Grayson was not a young man 52, I am told. The strain of the dig, the heat, the excitement of his find. It was too much. A heart attack, plain and simple." He gestured toward the scarab. "The workers speak of curses, but we are men of reason, yes." Poirot's eyes, bright and unyielding. "Met Mahmoud's reason, Monsieur l'Inspecteur, is my guiding star. But reason tells me that a heart attack does not leave the scent of bitter almonds upon a man's lips." He pointed to a metal canteen on the table, its cap loosened, a faint powdery residue clinging to its rim. "This, I believe, holds the key to our tragedy. Tell me, who had access to Dr. Grayson's possessions this morning?" Mahmoud frowned, his confidence wavering. The canteen, it was his own, always at his side. The workers say he filled it himself from the camp's water supply. He hesitated, then added, but the site is busy, chaotic. Anyone could have approached it during the morning's work. Precisement, Poirot said, his voice soft but sharp. Anyone, and so, we must consider those who were near. His gaze swept the tent, settling on the three figures who stood apart, their postures betraying the weight of suspicion. Dr. Evelyn Carver, her auburn hair pinned tightly beneath a practical sun hat, stood with arms crossed, her expression one of cool detachment, though her eyes flicked briefly to the scarab. Reginald Holt, the curator, adjusted his monocle with trembling fingers, his thin lips pursed as if suppressing a nervous outburst. Amir, the local guide, leaned against a tent pole, his dark eyes watchful, his face an enigma of calm reserve. Poirot approached the canteen, lifting it with a handkerchief to avoid disturbing any traces. The residue was subtle, a faint white film that might escape a less discerning eye. He inhaled cautiously, confirming the bitter almond scent, though fainter here than on Grayson's breath. Cyanide, he said, almost to himself, swift and merciless. A poison that requires knowledge and opportunity. He turned to Mahmoud. We must have this analyzed, but I am certain of its nature. Tell me, who was with Dr. Grayson before he collapsed? Mahmoud consulted his notepad, his brow furrowing. According to the workers, Dr. Grayson was at the main excavation site early this morning, overseeing the scarab's removal from the tomb. Dr. Carver was nearby, working on her own section of the dig. Mr. Holt arrived shortly before the incident, inspecting the artifacts for his museum. Amir was guiding workers, as always, moving between the tents and the tomb entrance. And when did Dr. Grayson fall? Poirot pressed. Just after 9, Mahmoud replied. He was seen drinking from his canteen, then staggered and fell beside the scarab's box. The workers panicked, thinking it the curse. By the time I arrived, he was already gone. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the timeline. The canteen had been tampered with, likely that morning, when the camp was a flurry of activity. He turned to the trio, his voice deceptively mild. Madame Carver, Monsieur Holt, Monsieur Amir, a moment of your time, s'il vous plaît. Each of you was near this tragedy. Each of you may hold a piece of the truth. Dr. Carver stepped forward, her posture rigid. I was cataloging pottery shards in my section, she said, her voice clipped. I saw Grayson briefly, but I had no reason to approach his tent or his canteen. Her green eyes met Poirot's with a challenge, as if daring him to probe further. Holt, clutching his monocle, spoke next, his words tumbling out in a rush. I was here to assess the scarab for the Cairo Museum. Grayson's find belongs in Egypt, not some London vault. I was with the artifacts, yes, but I didn't touch his things. His nervous glance toward the scarab betrayed a deeper fixation. Amir's response was measured, his voice low. I was with the workers, showing them where to dig. Dr. Grayson was alive when I last saw him, drinking from his canteen near the tomb entrance. His eyes, dark and unreadable, held Poirot's for a moment before dropping to the ground. Poirot's mustache curved slightly, a sign of his mind at work. Each alibi was plausible, yet none was ironclad. The camp's chaos provided ample opportunity for a deft hand to slip poison into the canteen. He turned back to the body, noting clenched hands once more. A small detail caught his eye, a faint smudge of dirt on the archaeologist's right cuff, darker than the surrounding sand, as if he had brushed against something distinct. Poirot filed it away, a thread to tug later. He moved to the scarab's box, examining it without touching. The wooden case was simple, but the amulet within was exquisite, its gold untarnished by millennia. The hieroglyphs, according to Grayson's notes, spoke of a curse upon those who disturbed the relic's rest, a warning that had fueled the workers' fears. Poirot, however, saw only a prop in a human drama. "This scarab," he said, addressing the room, "it is beautiful, Nan. But beauty often masks danger, not from curses, but from those who desire it." Mahmoud shifted uncomfortably. "You think this was murder, Mr. Poirot, over an artifact?" "Not just an artifact," Inspector Poirot replied. "A symbol of power, prestige, perhaps vengeance. We must learn who coveted it most." He gestured to the canteen. "This must be sent to a laboratory in Cairo. We need confirmation of the poison and any fingerprints. And I wish to speak with the workers who saw Dr. Grayson this morning. Their eyes may have caught what their tongues do not yet say." Mahmoud nodded, scribbling in his notepad. "I'll arrange it. But the workers are superstitious. They believe the scarab's curse struck Grayson down. It will be hard to get clear answers." "Then we shall appeal to their reason," Poirot said, his tone firm. "Or, failing that, to their fear of justice." He turned to the suspects, his gaze lingering on each. Carver's composure was a fortress, but her fingers twitched slightly, betraying unease. Holt's nervous energy seemed to coil tighter, his monocle glinting as he adjusted it. Amir's silence was a wall, his expression betraying neither guilt nor innocence. Poirot stepped outside the tent, the sun assaulting his senses anew. The excavation site stretched before him, a labyrinth of trenches and scaffolding, workers pausing to glance at the foreigner in the pristine suit. Khalil, the guide who had brought him, approached. "They are afraid, Effendi," he said, gesturing to the workers. "They say the scarab's god will take more lives." "Then we must prove the god is mortal," Poirot replied. He beckoned Khalil closer. "Tell me, mon ami, did you see Dr. Grayson with anyone this morning? Anyone who approached his canteen?" Khalil hesitated, his eyes darting to the tent. "I saw Dr. Carver near his tent early, before the sun was high. She was speaking with him, but I could not hear. Mr. Holt was there too, later, looking at the scarab. Amir, he is everywhere, always moving. I cannot say for certain." Poirot nodded, his mind weaving a tapestry of possibilities. Carver's presence, Holt's obsession, Amir's omnipresent siege was a thread in the pattern of murder. He glanced back at the tent, where the scarab lay, its golden glow a silent witness to the crime. The desert held its secrets tightly. But Hercule Poirot was no stranger to unearthing truth from shadow. As Mahmoud organized the workers for questioning, Poirot took a moment to study this. The tomb entrance, a dark maw in the hillside, was cordoned off, its depths still yielding treasures. Grayson's tent, where the scarab had been stored, was central, accessible to all. The water supply, a cluster of barrels under a canopy, was a short walk away, unguarded during the morning's bustle. Opportunity, Poirot noted, was as abundant as the sand. He returned to the tent, his thoughts sharpening. The smudge on Grayson's cuff nagged at him, a detail out of place in the archaeologist's fastidious habits. He bent to examine it again, noting its texture, not the fine sand of the dig, but a darker clay-like soil. "Curio," he murmured. "Where did you find this, Dr. Grayson?" He straightened, his eyes narrowing. The answer, he suspected, lay not in the tomb, but in the movements of those around it. Poirot addressed the suspects once more, his voice calm but piercing. "You will remain at the camp, Mies, Amos. The truth is like the desert, it reveals itself slowly, but surely. Hercule Poirot will find it." Carver's lips tightened, Holt's monocle wobbled, and Amir's gaze flickered, just for a moment. The dance of deception had begun, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct, was ready to lead. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the dig, Poirot felt the weight of the mystery settle upon him. The scarab's curse was a myth, but the poison in Grayson's canteen was real. Someone had orchestrated this death, cloaking it in superstition, and Hercule Poirot, with his gray cells and relentless logic, would strip away the facade to reveal the murderer's face. Chapter 3. The rival's ambition. The afternoon sun bore down on the archaeological camp, its rays slicing through the canvas of Dr. Evelyn Carver's tent like a blade through silk. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the heat that clung to his immaculate suit, stepped inside, his eyes adjusting to the dimmer light. The interior was a study in ordered chaos, maps pinned to folding tables, stacks of journals teetering precariously, and a scattering of pottery shards labeled with meticulous care. Dr. Carver stood at the center, her auburn hair pulled back tightly, her green eyes sharp as she annotated a chart. She looked up as Poirot entered, her expression one of guarded courtesy. Though a flicker of impatience crossed her face, Dr. Carver Poirot began, his voice smooth as polished stone. "I thank you for granting me a moment. The death of Dr. Grayson is a tragedy, Nan, and yet it is my duty to seek clarity where shadows fall." Carver set down her pen, her movements deliberate. "Of course, Mr. Poirot," she replied, her tone crisp but civil. "I'll help however I can, though I doubt there's much to find." Grayson was careless rushing his dig, ignoring protocol. If anything, his own recklessness killed him. Her words carried a faint edge, a trace of disdain that did not escape Poirot's notice. He inclined his head, his mustache curving slightly. "Recklessness, madame, is a charge you level with conviction. Yet I wondered, did this recklessness provoke more than mere professional disagreement?" He gestured to the cluttered table, where a photograph of the scarab amulet lay among her notes. "Your own work. It is not so far from Dr. Grayson's. A rival dig, a rival ambition." Carver's eyes narrowed, but she maintained her composure, folding her arms. "Rivalry is part of this field, Mr. Poirot. Grayson and I competed. For funding, for prestige, but I didn't need his death to succeed. My research stands on its own." She paused, then added, "I was in my section of the dig when he collapsed, cataloging artifacts. Ask the workers, they'll confirm it." Poirot's gaze lingered on her hands, noting a slight tremor as she reached for a water glass. "And yet, madame, you were seen near Dr. Grayson's tent this morning, before the tragedy. A brief conversation, perhaps, or something more." His voice was gentle, but his eyes were unyielding, probing for the crack in her armor. Carver's lips tightened. "I spoke to him briefly, yes, about coordinating our surveys. Nothing more. If you're implying I had anything to do with his death, you're mistaken." She turned away, busying herself with a stack of papers, but Poirot caught the fleeting tension in her shoulders. He stepped closer, his tone conversational yet precise. "You are a woman of science, Dr. Carver. Your publications most impressive include studies of ancient compounds, Nan, some might say poisons." He watched her closely, noting the faint stiffening of her posture. "Cyanide, for example, is a substance not unknown to those with your expertise." Carver spun to face him, her cheeks flushing. "That's absurd." "Yes, I've studied ancient toxicology. Many of us have. It's part of understanding burial practices. But to suggest I'd use that knowledge to kill Grayson is outrageous." Her voice rose, but she caught herself, lowering it to a controlled pitch. "I had no reason to harm him. His death only complicates my work delays, inquiries, all this nonsense about curses." Poirot nodded, as if conceding her point, though his mind was far from satisfied. "The curse, madame, is a convenient veil, is it not? It distracts from the human hand that poured poison into a canteen." He paused, letting the words settle. "Tell me, what did you think of this scarab amulet? A find of such magnitude, it must have stirred envy, even in a heart as disciplined as yours." Carver's gaze flicked to the photograph of the scarab, then back to Poirot. "It's a remarkable piece, of course, but my focus is my own dig. I don't need Grayson's relics to make my mark." Her words were firm, but Poirot detected a note of defensiveness. A crack in her polished facade. He moved to the table, examining the photograph without touching it. The scarab's hieroglyphs were identical to those in Grayson's notes, their warnings of divine retribution a stark contrast to the clinical precision of Carver's workspace. You were not tempted, perhaps, to secure this relic for your own project, to eclipse your rival's triumph. Carver's laugh was sharp, almost brittle. If I wanted to outshine Grayson, I'd do it with my own finds, not by stealing his. I'm not that desperate. She met his gaze, her eyes defiant. You're barking up the wrong tree, Mr. Poirot. Look to Holt, he's obsessed with that scarab, or Amir. Always skulking about, muttering about foreigners desecrating his land. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his amusement at her deflection. Mercy, madame, for your candor. I shall consider all possibilities, rest assured. He stepped toward the tent's entrance, then paused, turning back. One final question. Did you notice anything unusual about Dr. Grayson's canteen this morning? A residue, perhaps, or someone near it? Carver hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of her chart. No, she said at last. I didn't go near his canteen. I had my own work to attend to. Her tone was steady, but Poirot noted the brief pause, the slight tightening of her jaw. He bowed slightly, his politeness amasked for his relentless scrutiny. Very well, Dr. Carver. We shall speak again, I think. As he stepped into the blistering sunlight, the desert's heat enveloped him, but his mind was cool, calculating. Carver's intellect was formidable, her alibi plausible, yet her proximity to Grayson's tent and her knowledge of poisons made her a figure of interest. The tremor in her hands, the edge in her voice, small details, but to Poirot, they were brushstrokes in a portrait of potential guilt. Outside, the camp buzzed with activity. Workers hauling baskets of earth under the watchful eye of Amir, who stood at a distance, his silhouette sharp against the dunes. Reginald Holt was visible near the main excavation, his monocle glinting as he bent over a crate of artifacts. Poirot's gaze lingered on them both, his gray cells weaving a web of connections. Carver's ambition was afire, burning brightly but dangerously. Had it consumed her rival in a moment of calculated malice? He made his way to a shaded canopy where Inspector Mahmoud was questioning a group of workers, their faces etched with unease. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, Poirot said, joining him, have you learned anything of note? Mahmoud wiped his brow, his notepad filled with hurried scribbles. The workers are reluctant, Mr. Poirot. They insist the scarab's curse took Grayson. But one man, Saeed, says he saw Dr. Carver near Grayson's tent at dawn, before the camp was fully awake. He couldn't hear their conversation, but she left quickly. Poirot's eyes brightened. Dawn, you say? Most interesting. And what of Monsieur Holt and Amir? Saeed saw Holt arrive later, around 8, fussing over the scarab's crate. Amir was with the workers, as he said, moving between the tomb and the tents. No one saw him near the canteen specifically. Mahmoud sighed. It's all vague, Mr. Poirot. The workers are too frightened to think clearly. Then we must help them think, Poirot replied, his voice firm. Fear clouds the mind, but Hercule Poirot sees through such mists. He glanced back at Carver's tent, where her silhouette was visible, bent over her work. Her alibi was unconfirmed, her motive rooted in a rivalry that ran deeper than she admitted. The photograph of the scarab on her table suggested an interest she downplayed. And her knowledge of poisons, could it be coincidence? Poirot's thoughts turned to the canteen, now in Mahmoud's custody, awaiting analysis in Cairo. The residue within was the key, but the hand that placed it there remained elusive. Carver's expertise made her a prime suspect, yet Holt's obsession and Amir's quiet resentment could not be dismissed. The desert, with its secrets buried in sand, was a fitting stage for such a crime. But Poirot knew the truth lay not in ancient curses but in the passions of the living dot. As he walked back toward the main camp, the scarab's image lingered in his mind, its golden gleam a beacon of motive. Carver's ambition was a thread in the tapestry of murder. But was it the only one? Poirot's gray cells hummed, piecing together the puzzle. The rival's ambition was clear, but the truth, he suspected, was a shade darker, waiting to be uncovered in the desert's relentless light. Chapter 4. The curator's obsession. The sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the archaeological camp where the air was thick with the scent of dust and the faint hum of unease. Hercule Poirot, his suit still pristine, despite the desert's assault, navigated the maze of tents with purposeful steps. His destination, the makeshift office of Reginald Holt, curator of the Cairo Museum. The tent, larger than most, stood near the excavation's edge. Its interior, a shrine to Egypt's past, cluttered with sketches, photographs, and neatly labeled crates. Poirot's mustache twitched as he entered, his sharp eyes taking in the scene. Holt, a wiry man with a monocle perched precariously on his nose, was hunched over a table, his fingers tracing the outline of a scarab drawing with an almost reverent intensity. "Mr. Holt," Poirot said, his voice a blend of courtesy and command. "A moment, s'il vous plaît, to discuss the tragedy that has befallen Dr. Grayson." Holt started, his monocle slipping as he looked up, his thin face flushed with a mix of irritation and nervousness. "Mr. Poirot," he replied, adjusting his lens with a trembling hand, "this is a dreadful business. Grayson was a fine scholar, if misguided. The scarab such a find belongs in Cairo, not some foreign museum. I was merely ensuring its proper documentation when it happened." His words tumbled out, as if haste could outrun suspicion. Poirot inclined his head, his gaze steady. "Your dedication to Egypt's treasures is admirable, monsieur. But dedication, it can become obsession, Nan. This scarab, it holds great value for you." He gestured to the table, where a notebook lay open, filled with detailed sketches of the amulet, each stroke betraying a fixation that bordered on mania. Holt's lips pursed, his eyes darting to the notebook before returning to Poirot. "Obsession? No, it's duty. The Cairo Museum has a responsibility to preserve Egypt's heritage. Grayson planned to ship the scarab to London a travesty. I argued with him, yes, but murder." He shook his head vigorously, his monocle wobbling. "I had no part in that." Poirot stepped closer, his movements deliberate, like a cat circling its prey. "And yet, Monsieur Holt, you were near the site this morning, inspecting artifacts, were you not? Close to Dr. Grayson's tent, where his canteen rested, unguarded." His voice was soft, but each word carried the weight of scrutiny. Holt's fingers tightened around his pencil, snapping it with a faint crack. "I was reviewing the day's finds, yes, but I didn't go near his tent. The workers can confirm I was with the crates, 100 yards away." His voice rose, a defensive edge creeping in. "I saw nothing of his canteen, nothing of him until he collapsed." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the flicker of unease in Holt's posture. 100 yards, you say? A short distance in a busy camp, where eyes are distracted by labor and dust. Tell me, monsieur, what is it about this scarab that stirs such passion in you? Is it merely its historical value, or something more personal? Holt hesitated, his gaze dropping to the scarab sketch. "It's a masterpiece," he said at last, his voice low, almost reverent. "Third dynasty, unparalleled craftsmanship. Its hieroglyphs speak of protection, but also of retribution for those who defile it. To see it leave Egyptid would be a betrayal of everything I've worked for." His hands clenched, betraying a fervor that went beyond curatorial duty. Poirot noted the intensity, filing it away like a card in his mental index. "Betrayal is a strong word, monsieur. Strong enough to inspire desperate acts, perhaps. He paused, letting the question hang in the air. You argued with Dr. Grayson about the scarab's fate. Did this argument grow heated, perhaps enough to cloud your judgment? Holt's face reddened, his monocle glinting as he leaned forward. I won't deny we disagreed. Grayson was stubborn, blind to Egypt's claim, but I didn't kill him. I was nowhere near his canteen, and I have no knowledge of poisons. He gestured to his cluttered desk. My work is here, in preserving history, not destroying lives. Poirot's mustache curved slightly, a sign of his mind at work. He moved to the table, examining the sketches without touching them. The scarab's image dominated Holt's notebook, its lines drawn with obsessive care, as if each stroke were a prayer to keep it in Egypt. Your passion is evident, Monsieur Holt, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, but passion can blind as well as inspire. Tell me, did you see anyone near Dr. Grayson's tent this morning? Dr. Carver, perhaps, or Amir? Holt's eyes flickered, a brief hesitation before he answered. I saw Carver early, near the tomb entrance, speaking with Grayson. She seemed agitated, but I didn't linger. Amir was everywhere, as usual, directing workers. I didn't notice anything specific about the canteen. His voice steadied, but Poirot caught the slight quiver in his hands, the nervous adjustment of his monocle. Merci, monsieur, Poirot said, stepping back. Your account is most helpful, but I must ask you to remain at the camp. The truth, it is like an artifact buried, but not beyond reach. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back. One last thing, have you ever handled cyanide, perhaps in your work preserving artifacts? Holt's face paled, his monocle nearly falling. Cyanide. Good heavens, no. We use chemicals for restoration, but nothing so deadly. I'm a curator, not a chemist. His indignation seemed genuine, but Poirot's gray cells were not so easily convinced. Outside, the camp was settling into the late afternoon. The workers' voices softer now, tinged with the weariness of a long day. Poirot stood for a moment, his eyes scanning the horizon, where the hills of the Valley of the Kings loomed like silent sentinels. Holt's obsession with the scarab was a motive as clear as the desert sky. Yet his nervous demeanor suggested fear rather than guilt. Could a man so consumed by relics orchestrate a murder so precise? Or was his agitation a mask for something deeper? Poirot made his way to the main excavation site, where Inspector Mahmoud was overseeing the cataloging of artifacts. The inspector looked up, his face etched with frustration. Mr. Poirot, the workers are still talking of curses. It's slowing everything down. Have you learned anything from Holt? Poirot's lips curved slightly. Monsieur Holt is a man possessed, Inspector, but whether by guilt or merely passion, I am not yet certain. He confirms Dr. Carver's presence near Grayson this morning, and Amir's constant movement, but his own whereabouts convenient. Distant are not fully corroborated. Mahmoud nodded, jotting a note. I've spoken to a worker, Omar, who says Holt was indeed with the crates, but he can't swear he stayed there the whole time. The camp was too chaotic. As for the canteen, it's on its way to Cairo for analysis. We'll know soon if it's cyanide, Bon Poirot said, his eyes bright. The canteen will speak, but so too will the silences of our suspects. Holt's obsession with the scarab is a thread we must follow, but we must also look to Dr. Carver's ambition and Amir's quiet resentment. Each has a reason to wish Grayson gone. He glanced toward the tomb entrance, where Amir was visible, directing workers with a calm authority. The guide's presence was ubiquitous, yet his motives remained opaque. Poirot's thoughts returned to Holt's notebook, the scarab's image dominating every page. Obsession could drive a man to extremes, but it required opportunity access to the canteen, knowledge of poison. Holt claimed ignorance of cyanide, but his role as curator gave him access to chemicals, perhaps even those not listed in his inventory. As Poirot walked back toward the central camp, the scarab's hieroglyphs lingered in his mind, their warnings of retribution, a convenient cloak for murder. Holt's fervor was a piece of the puzzle, but it did not yet fit with the precision of the crime. The curator's obsession was a flame, but was it hot enough to kill? Poirot's gray cells hummed, sifting through the details, ready to unearth the truth from the desert's deceptive calm. Chapter 5. The guide's silence. The twilight cast a violet hush over the Valley of the Kings, the day's heat yielding to a cooler, restless air that stirred the canvas tents like whispers of the past. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette sharp against the fading light, made his way to the workers' camp, a cluster of low tents at the excavation's edge where the local laborers gathered after their toils. His polished shoes, now lightly dusted with sand, moved with purpose toward a solitary figure seated by a small fire, sharpening a knife with slow, deliberate strokes. Amir, the local guide, was a man of few words, his lean frame and dark eyes blending into the desert's mystery as naturally as the dunes themselves. To Poirot, this silence was not a void, but a canvas, painted with secrets waiting to be deciphered. "Bonsoir, Monsieur Amir," Poirot said, his voice a blend of warmth and precision as he approached. The firelight flickered across Amir's face, highlighting the sharp angles of his features. "May I join you? The death of Dr. Grayson weighs heavily on us all, and I seek the perspective of one who knows this land so well." Amir's hands paused, the knife glinting briefly before he resumed his task, the blade scraping rhythmically against the whetstone. "Sit, Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice low, measured, carrying the cadence of the desert itself. "Grayson's death is a shadow on this place. The workers say the scarab's curse took him. They fear to touch the earth now." His eyes met Poirot's, steady but guarded, revealing nothing beyond a quiet intensity. Poirot settled onto a low stool, adjusting his hat to shield his face from the fire's glare. "The curse, monsieur, is a tale for those who fear the unknown. But you, I think, are not so easily swayed. You have seen much in this valley. Men come, men go, their ambitions stirring the sand. Tell me, what did you see this morning, before Dr. Grayson met his end?" Amir's hand stilled, the knife resting against the stone. "I was with the workers," he said, his tone even, guiding them to the secondary trench, away from Grayson's sight. "He was alive when I last saw him, standing by his tent, drinking from his canteen. I had no business with him," he resumed, sharpening the sound, a soft counterpoint to the distant murmur of the camp. Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes never leaving Amir's face. "No business, perhaps, but proximity. You move through this camp like a shadow, Monsieur Amir, seen yet unseen. The cantinet was left unattended, was it not? A moment's distraction, and a deft hand could tamper with it." Amir's gaze flicked to Poirot, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "You think I poisoned him? I am a guide, not a killer. My work is to protect this land, not to spill blood upon it." He set the knife down, its blade catching the firelight. "Grayson disrespected our history, digging without care, taking what belongs to Egypt. But I had no need to kill him. The desert has its own justice." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. "Justice, monsieur, is a word that carries many meanings. You speak of disrespect. Did it anger you, perhaps, to see foreigners plunder your heritage? The scarab, with its warnings of retribution, might inspire a man to act, to protect what he holds dear." Amir's expression hardened, but his voice remained steady. "I am no fool, Mr. Poirot. I know the scarab's tales are old, meant to guard tombs, not to kill. If Grayson died by poison, look to those with knowledge of such things, Dr. Carver, perhaps, with her books and chemicals, or Holt, who cannot let the scarab go." He gestured toward the main camp. where the tents of Carver and Holt stood silhouetted against the twilight. Poirot's eyes narrowed, noting the deflection, the subtle shift in Amir's posture. You are observant, Monsieur Amir. You see much, yet say little. Tell me, where were you precisely when Dr. Grayson collapsed? The workers place you near the tomb entrance, then at the trenches, but the canteen was in his tent, accessible to those who passed by. Amir's fingers brushed the knife's handle, a gesture almost unconscious. I was moving, as I always do. The workers need guidance where to dig, where to tread carefully. I was not in Grayson's tent, nor near his canteen. Ask Omar, or Syed. They saw me at the trenches. His tone was calm, but Poirot caught the faintest tightening of his jaw. A ripple in the guide's composed surface. Mercy, monsieur, Poirot said, rising with a grace that belied the desert's roughness. Your words are noted, and your silence most eloquent. We shall speak again, I think. He turned to leave, then paused, his voice casual but deliberate. One small matter. Have you ever handled Dr. Grayson's canteen? Perhaps to refill it as a courtesy? Amir's eyes met Poirot's unblinking. No, he said simply. He guarded it closely, filled it himself from the barrels. I had no cause to touch it. The fire crackled, punctuating the silence that followed, and Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging every nuance of the exchange as he walked back toward the main camp. The desert night closing in, Poirot's thoughts churned, like the sands under a sudden wind. Amir's silence was a fortress, his words carefully chosen, offering just enough to satisfy without revealing. His resentment of Grayson's methods was clear, yet his demeanor suggested control, not impulse. Could such a man, steeped in the traditions of his land, resort to poison a modern weapon to exact justice? Or was his role merely that of a witness, his silence a shield for another's guilt? Poirot found Inspector Mahmoud near the water barrels, speaking with a worker named Saeed, whose nervous glances toward the tomb entrance betrayed his fear of the curse. Monsieur l'Inspecteur, Poirot said, joining them, what have you learned from the workers? Mahmoud sighed, his notepad damp with sweat. Little that is clear, Mr. Poirot. Saeed confirms Amir was at the trenches most of the morning, but he admits the camp was hectic. No one watched Grayson's tent closely. The canteen could have been tampered with by anyone passing through. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, not anyone, Inspector. Only those with motive and means. Amir speaks of Dr. Carver's chemicals, of Monsieur Holt's fixation. He deflects, but his own presence is a constant in this drama. He turned to Syed, his voice gentle but firm. Tell me, Monsieur Syed, did you see Amir approach Dr. Grayson's tent at any time this morning? Syed hesitated, his hands twisting a rag. I saw him near the tomb, then at the trenches, but the tent, I cannot say. He moves quickly, always working. I was carrying earth, not watching. His eyes darted to the ground, as if the sand might swallow his uncertainty. Poirot nodded, dismissing Syed with a kind word. To Mahmoud, he said, Amir's alibi is fluid, like the desert itself. He is everywhere, yet nowhere specific. We must press further, learn if he had access to cyanide, or if his resentment of Grayson ran deeper than he admits. The inspector frowned. Cyanide. A local guide would not have such a thing, surely. Dr. Carver, with her science, or Holt, with his museum resources, they are more likely, yes. Perhaps, Poirot replied, his tone enigmatic. But the desert teaches us that the simplest path is not always the true one. Amir knows this land, its secrets, its resources. We must not dismiss him so quickly. He glanced toward the workers' camp, where Amir's fire still burned, a solitary beacon in the gathering dark. As Poirot returned to the main camp, the scarab's image lingered in his mind, its hieroglyphs a riddle of human intent rather than Divine wrath. Amir's silence was a piece of the puzzle, but was it the silence of innocence or calculation? The guide's knowledge of the camp, his access to every corner, made him a shadow that could conceal a deadly act. Yet the poison required planning, precision, qualities that seemed at odds with Amir's understated presence. Poirot's gray cells hummed, weaving the threads of motive and opportunity. Carver's ambition, Holt's obsession, Amir's resentment, each was a note in the symphony of murder, but the conductor remained hidden. The desert night closed around him, its silence as profound as Amir's, and Poirot knew the truth lay just beyond his grasp, waiting to be illuminated by his relentless logic. Chapter 6. The Canteen's Cloaked. Morning sun rose over the Valley of the Kings, its light piercing the haze of dust that hung over the archaeological camp, illuminating the tents and trenches with a clarity that seemed to mock the mystery within. Hercule Poirot, his suit as impeccable as ever, despite the desert's relentless assault, stood inside the canvas tent where Dr. Harold Grayson's body had lain hours before. The cot was now empty, the body removed to Cairo for examination. But the air still carried the faint, acrid trace of cyanide, a scent that lingered like an accusation. On the wooden table, the golden scarab amulet gleamed in its open box, its hieroglyphs silent witnesses to the crime. Poirot's eyes, however, were drawn to the metal canteen, its surface dulled by a faint powdery residue that held the key to Grayson's death. He lifted the canteen with a handkerchief, his movements precise, almost surgical, as he examined it under the slanting light. The residue, a thin white film around the rim, was unmistakable to his trained senses. Cyanide, dissolved in water, a poison, swift and merciless. Mon Dieu, he murmured, such a small vessel for such a great crime. The canteen's cap was loose, its threads clean but slightly worn, suggesting frequent use. Poirot's gray cells churned, piecing together the timeline of Grayson's final moments. A worker, Omar, had seen the archaeologist take a sip from this very canteen just before he staggered and fell, clutching his chest in agony. The poison had acted swiftly, but when and by whose hand had it been introduced? Inspector Mahmoud entered the tent, his broad face etched with fatigue, his notepad clutched like a shield against the camp's growing unrest. "Mr. Poirot," he said, mopping his brow, "the workers are restless. They refuse to dig near the tomb, fearing the curse. I've sent the canteen to Cairo for analysis, but it will take time. Have you found anything new?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "The canteen, Monsieur l'Inspecteur, speaks where men are silent. This residue cyanide, I am certain, tells us the method of murder. But the hand that placed it here, that is the puzzle we must solve." He set the canteen down carefully, his eyes scanning the tent's interior. A folding chair, a stack of Grayson's journals, a small crate of tools. Nothing was out of place, yet the scene felt staged, as if the killer had anticipated scrutiny. Mahmoud nodded, his skepticism softening under Poirot's certainty. "You believe it was deliberate, then? Not an accident, or this curse nonsense?" "Precisement," Poirot replied, his voice firm. "A curse does not dissolve poison in a man's water. This was a human act, calculated and cold. We must learn who had access to this canteen, and when." He turned to Mahmoud, his gaze piercing. "Tell me, what have the workers said of the morning's events? Who was near this tent before Dr. Grayson's collapse?" Mahmoud consulted his notes, his fingers smudging the ink. "Omar, the worker who saw Grayson drink, says the canteen was on this table all morning, left unattended during the dig's chaos. Dr. Carver was seen near the tent at dawn, as I told you. Mr. Holt passed by later, around 8, inspecting the scarab's crate. Amir was moving between the trenches and the tomb entrance, as he claims, but no one saw anyone touch the canteen directly." He sighed, his shoulders sagging. "The camp is a hive, Mr. Poirot. Too many eyes, yet none see clearly." Poirot's lips curved slightly, a faint smile that belied the intensity of his thoughts. Eyes may be clouded. Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. Jam 3:45 menit PM PKT. But the mind of Hercule Poirot is not. Must question those eyes, Inspector, and find the one pair that saw too much. He stepped outside the tent, beckoning Mahmoud to follow, and made his way to the water barrels under a nearby canopy, where Grayson had reportedly filled his canteen each morning. The barrels were unguarded, their lids loose, surrounded by footprints in the sand, a public space, vulnerable to tampering. He knelt beside the barrels, examining the ground for any unusual marks. A faint smudge of dark clay, distinct from the surrounding sand, caught his eye, reminiscent of the stain on Grayson's cuff. "Curio," he murmured, rising to his feet. "This clay, it is not native to this area. Where did it come from?" He filed the detail away, a thread to tug later, and turned his attention back to the canteen's journey. Grayson, a meticulous man, had filled it himself at dawn, according to Syed, yet by 9, it was poisoned. The window of opportunity was narrow, but the camp's bustle provided ample cover. Poirot summoned Omar, a wiry worker with calloused hands and wary eyes, to the tent. "Monsieur Omar," he began, his voice gentle but probing, "you saw Dr. Grayson drink from his canteen. Tell me, did you see anyone near it before that moment? A fleeting shadow, perhaps, or a hand that lingered too long?" Omar shifted, his gaze dropping to the sand. "It was busy, Effendi," he said, his voice low. "Dr. Grayson left his canteen on the table when he went to the tomb. I saw Dr. Carver pass by early, before the sun was high, and Mr. Holt was near the tent later, checking crates. Amir was everywhere, as always, but I didn't see him touch anything. I was carrying earth, not watching closely." His words echoed Sayed's, a refrain of distraction and ambiguity. Poirot nodded, dismissing Omar with a kind word, then turned to Mahmoud. "The canteen was a target of convenience, Inspector. Left unattended, it invited a clever hand. But who among our trio had the means to procure cyanide?" He paced the tent, his small frame radiating purpose. "Dr. Carver, with her chemical knowledge, could easily obtain such a poison. Monsieur Holt, as curator, has access to preservation compounds, some of which may include cyanide derivatives. And Amr, his knowledge of the land might extend to local toxins, though cyanide is not a common tool here." Mahmoud frowned, his notepad sagging in his hand. "Cyanide is not easy to come by, Mr. Poirot. Dr. Carver's expertise makes her the most likely. But Holt's museum connections could provide access. Amir, I don't see how a guide would have it, unless he procured it from an outside source." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Exactly, Inspector. The source of the poison is as crucial as its placement. We must learn if any of our suspects had access to such a substance in the days before the murder." He glanced at the scarab, its golden glow a silent taunt. "The motive, too, is a question. Was it Dr. Carver's ambition to eclipse her rival? Monsieur Holt's obsession to keep the scarab in Egypt? Or Amir's resentment of foreign plunderers, cloaked in the guise of a curse?" He stepped outside, the sun now high, baking the camp in relentless heat. The workers moved sluggishly, their fear of the curse slowing their pace. Poirot's gaze swept the site, the tomb entrance, dark and foreboding. The water barrels, exposed and vulnerable. The tents, each a potential stage for deceit. The dark clay smudge nagged at him, a clue out of place in the uniform sand. He resolved to investigate its origin, suspecting it might point to a specific location, perhaps one visited by the killer. Returning to the tent, Poirot examined Grayson's journals, stacked neatly on the table. A quick scan revealed meticulous notes on the scarab's discovery, but nothing about clay or unusual movements. The archaeologist's habits were precise, his canteen a personal ritual, yet someone had breached that ritual with deadly intent. Poirot's mind turned to the suspect's motives. Carver's professional jealousy, Holt's possessive fervor, Amir's cultural outrage. Each had been near the tent, each had opportunity. But the poison required planning, access, and nerve. He addressed Mahmoud, his voice steady. "We must reconstruct the morning's movements, Inspector, hour by hour, step by step." The canteen was filled at dawn, left on this table, and poisoned by 9. Someone acted in that window, unseen but not invisible. "We will find them." His gray cells hummed, weaving the threads of evidence, the residue, the clay, the suspect's alibis into a tapestry that was beginning to take shape. The scarab's curse was a myth, but the canteen's clue was real, and Hercule Poirot was determined to follow it to the truth. Chapter 7. A hidden rivalry, though. Evening descended upon the Valley of the Kings with a quiet that seemed to hush even the restless sands, the camp's lanterns casting a soft glow over the tents and trenches. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette a study in precision against the flickering light, stood at the edge of the central clearing, where a makeshift dining area had been arranged for the camp's key figures. A long table, draped in a faded cloth, bore plates of simple fare flatbread, dates, and roasted lambiette. The atmosphere was anything but convivial. The death of Dr. Harold Grayson hung over the gathering like a storm cloud, and Poirot's gray cells were alert, sensing that the interplay of the suspects seated before him would reveal more than their words. Alone, Dr. Evelyn Carver sat at one end, her posture rigid, her auburn hair catching the lantern light as she picked at her food with calculated indifference. Reginald Holt, his monocle glinting, sat opposite, his thin fingers fidgeting with a napkin, his eyes darting to the empty space where Grayson might have been. Amir, the local guide, occupied a chair slightly apart, his dark gaze fixed on the fire beyond the table, his silence a wall that invited scrutiny. Inspector Mahmoud, weary but dutiful, joined them, his presence a reminder of the law's watchful eye. Poirot, seated at the table's head, observed them all, his mustache a calm sentinel over a mind in ceaseless motion. "Mise à mise, Poirot," began, his voice a blend of warmth and authority. "We gather to honor Dr. Grayson's memory, but also to seek the truth of his passing. The desert, it is vast, yet it cannot hide the secrets of the heart. Let us speak plainly, for the truth is near." His words were met with tense silence, the clink of a spoon against a plate sounding unnaturally loud. Carver broke the quiet, her tone sharp. "Plainly, Mr. Poirot. Very well, Grayson's death is a tragedy, but it's no mystery. He pushed himself too hard, ignored the heat, the strain. The curse is nonsense, but his recklessness was real." She glanced at Holt, her eyes narrowing. "Some here might have wished him gone, but I had no need to hasten it." Holt's monocle wobbled as he leaned forward, his voice rising. "That's rich, Evelyn. You resented Grayson's success, his funding, his scarab. Don't pretend you weren't furious when he secured the permit for this dig over yours." He turned to Poirot, his face flushed. "She's the one with motive, Mr. Poirot. Her career was faltering, Grayson's triumph was her failure." Carver's cheeks reddened, but her voice remained steady. "My career is hardly faltering, Reginald. I don't need to kill to prove my worth. But your obsession with keeping that scarab in Cairo borders on madness. Did you think Grayson's death would secure it for your museum?" Holt sputtered, his napkin crumpling in his fist. "Madness. I'm protecting Egypt's heritage. Grayson would have shipped that amulet to London, stripped it from its rightful home. I argued with him, yes, but I didn't touch his wretched canteen." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind cataloguing the barbs, the accusations, the undercurrents of truth beneath the vitriol. He turned to Amir, who had yet to speak, his hands folded calmly in his lap. "And you, Monsieur Amir, what do you make of this exchange? You see much, yet say little." Did Dr. Grayson's actions, his taking of the scarab, stir anger in you? Perhaps. Amir's gaze shifted to Poirot, his expression unreadable. Grayson cared for glory, not for Egypt, he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. He dug without respect, as many foreigners do. But I am a guide, not a judge. His death serves no one, neither me nor my people. His words were measured, but Poirot caught the faint tightening of his fingers, a sign of restrained emotion. Poirot leaned back, his hands steepled, his tone deceptively light. A rivalry, an obsession, a resentment. Each of you has a reason to wish Dr. Grayson gone. Yet only one hand placed poison in his canteen. Let us consider his habits. He was meticulous, was he not? His canteen, filled each morning from the camp's barrels, was a ritual he guarded closely. Mahmoud nodded, consulting his notes. Yes, Mr. Poirot, Syed confirmed. Grayson filled his canteen at dawn, as always, from the main barrels. He kept it with him, or on the table in his tent. No one saw anyone tamper with it, but the camp was busy. Workers, crates, tools everywhere. Poirot's mustache twitched. Busy, yet not blind. Someone saw their chance, and took it. He turned to Carver, his gaze piercing. Madame, you were seen near Grayson's tent at dawn, speaking with him. A professional discussion, you said. But perhaps it was more a moment to approach the canteen, unseen. Carver's fork clattered against her plate, her eyes flashing. I've told you, Mr. Poirot. I spoke to him about survey alignments. I didn't go near his canteen, nor would I. If you must accuse, look to Holt. He was hovering around the artifacts all morning, close enough to slip something into that tent. Holt's face purpled, his monocle falling to the table with a clink. Preposterous. I was cataloging crates, not sneaking about like some thief. Amir was closer to the tent than I was, always moving, always watching. Why not question him? Amir's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained calm. I guide workers, Mr. Holt, not poison men. If you seek a killer, look to those with access to poisons. Your museum, perhaps, or Dr. Carver's laboratory. His deflection was smooth, but Poirot noted the way his gaze lingered on the others, as if measuring their reactions. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the escalating accusations. Enough, Miss Amos. The truth does not emerge from shouts, but from careful observation. Let us consider another detail. Dr. Grayson's cuff bore a smudge of dark clay, not native to this sandy valley. Did any of you notice him near such soil, perhaps at a secondary site? The question hung in the air, met with blank stares. Carver frowned, her fingers tapping the table. Clay? No, I didn't see anything like that. Grayson was focused on the tomb, not wandering elsewhere. Holt shook his head, muttering about artifacts, while Amir remained silent, his eyes fixed on the fire. Poirot's mind raced, the clay a tantalizing clue that refused to align with the camp's geography. He shifted the conversation, probing deeper into Grayson's habits. Tell me, Madame Carver, Monsieur Holt, Monsieur Ammer, did Dr. Grayson share his water with anyone? A gesture of camaraderie, perhaps? Carver shook her head. He was possessive about that canteen, always refilling it himself, never offering it. Holt and Amir echoed her, their denials swift but plausible. Poirot filed this away. The canteen was a solitary ritual, making its tampering a deliberate act, not a mistake. As the meal ended, the suspects dispersed, their tension lingering like dust in the air. Poirot remained with Mahmoud, his voice low. Inspector, the clay on Grayson's cuff is a puzzle. We must find its source, perhaps a hidden site, or a place one of our suspects visited. And we must press further on their movements. Carver's dawn visit, Holt's proximity, Amir's omnipresence is a thread, but the pattern is incomplete. Mahmoud nodded, his fatigue giving way to determination. I'll have the workers search for clay deposits nearby, and I'll question them again, see if anyone saw more than they've admitted." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Bon. The canteen's poison is our anchor, but the clay is our compass. Someone in this camp knows more than they say, and Hercule Poirot will find them." He glanced at the scarab's tent, its silhouette looming in the dark. The rivalry between Carver and Grayson was a fire, Holt's obsession a fever, Amir's resentment a shadow butt which had cast the deadly stroke. The truth, Poirot knew, was close, hidden in the silences and glances of this uneasy gathering. Chapter 8. The trap is set. The night air in the Valley of the Kings was cool and sharp, a stark contrast to the day's oppressive heat. As Hercule Poirot stood beneath a sky pricked with stars, his silhouette a study in quiet resolve. The camp was hushed, the workers' fires reduced to glowing embers. Yet an undercurrent of unease pulsed through the tents, fueled by whispers of the scarab's curse. Poirot's gray cells, however, were unswayed by superstition. They churned, with the precision of a finely tuned engine, weaving the threads of evidence, cyanide, clay, and concealed motives into a net that would soon ensnare a killer. Tonight he would set a trap, one crafted not with force but with the subtle art of human nature, inside the main tent, where the golden scarab amulet rested in its wooden box. Poirot conferred with Inspector Mahmoud, his voice low and deliberate. "Monsieur l'inspecteur," he said, his eyes gleaming in the lantern light, "we have learned much, but not enough. The canteen's poison points to a calculated mind, yet our suspects, Dr. Carver, Monsieur Holt, Monsieur Amergard, their secrets well. We must provoke a reaction, Nan, a small deception to stir the guilty heart." Mahmoud's brow furrowed, his notepad clutched tightly. "A deception? What do you propose, Mr. Poirot?" "The workers are already on edge, and the suspects are wary." Poirot's mustache curved, a faint smile betraying his confidence. "We shall announce a discovery. Inspector a clue hidden in Dr. Grayson's journal, suggesting a secret compartment in the scarab's box. It is a fiction, Bean, sir, but the guilty one will be drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. Tonight, we watch the tent, and see who seeks to uncover this secret." Mahmoud nodded, his skepticism giving way to intrigue. "Clever, Mr. Poirot. But how do we spread this news without arousing suspicion?" "Leave that to me," Poirot replied, his tone crisp. "A casual remark at the right moment, and the camp's whispers will do the rest." He stepped outside, his gaze sweeping the darkened camp, where the tents of Carver, Holt, and Amir stood like sentinels of their secrets. The scarab's tent, cordoned off since Grayson's death, was a beacon in the night, its canvas glowing. Faintly under the watch of a single guard, Poirot made his way to the central clearing, where a small group of workers lingered, their voices low as they discussed the day's fears. Dr. Carver was nearby, reviewing a map under a lantern, while Holt hovered near a crate, his monocle catching the light. Amir, as ever, was a shadow at the camp's edge, his eyes scanning the darkness. Poirot approached the workers, his voice carrying just enough to reach the suspect's ears. "Mies Amos," he said, addressing the workers but ensuring his words drifted. "I have examined Dr. Grayson's journal, and it speaks of a hidden compartment in the scarab's box, a secret, perhaps, that explains his fate. Tonight, we shall investigate further, under the guard's watch." He paused, noting Carver's head lift slightly, Holt's nervous twitch, and Amir's subtle shift in posture. The seed was planted. Now, he would wait for it to sprout. Returning to Mahmoud, Poirot outlined the plan. "We conceal ourselves near the tent, Inspector, and observe. The guard will appear vigilant, but he will allow an intruder to enter. The guilty one, driven by fear or greed, will seek to uncover this compartment before it reveals their crime." Mahmoud arranged for the guard to play his part, positioning himself and Poirot in the shadows of a nearby tent, their view clear but hidden. The camp settled into an uneasy quiet, the stars above bearing witness to the drama below. Hours passed, the night deepening, until a faint rustle broke the silence. A figure, moving stealthily toward the scarab's tent. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his breath steady as he watched. The figure, cloaked in shadow, slipped past the guard, who feigned a yawn and turned away. Inside the tent, a lantern flickered to life, casting a silhouette against the canvas. Poirot and Mahmoud crept closer, their movements silent, until they reached the tent's entrance. With a swift gesture, Poirot pulled back the flap, revealing Dr. Evelyn Carver, her hands fumbling with the scarab's box, her face pale in the dim light. "Madame Carver," Poirot said, his voice sharp as a blade, "you seek something that does not exist. The compartment was a ruse, yet your presence here speaks volumes." Carver froze, her fingers trembling on the box's lid, her green eyes wide with shock. "Mr. Poirot," she stammered, recovering quickly, I heard your remark about the journal. I thought there might be evidence of Grayson's findings, something to advance my own work. I meant no harm." Poirot's mustache twitched, his gaze unyielding. "No harm, madame. Yet you enter a guarded tent in the dead of night, searching a relic tied to a murder. Your curiosity, it is most revealing." He stepped closer, his voice softening but no less piercing. "Did you hope to find a clue to clear your name, or to ensure no clue points to you?" Carver's cheeks flushed, her composure fraying. "This is absurd. I'm an archaeologist, not a thief or a killer. I wanted to see if Grayson hid notes about the scarab, something to explain his obsession, his death. You can't accuse me on this alone." Mahmoud stepped forward, his notepad ready. "Dr. Carver, you were seen near Grayson's tent at dawn. And now you're here, tampering with evidence. Explain yourself." Carver's eyes darted between them, her voice rising. "I've explained. I spoke to Grayson about surveys, nothing more. Tonight, I acted on impulse, yes, but only to protect. My work holds the one obsessed with the scarab. Ask him why he's so desperate to keep it." Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. "Enough, madame. Your actions tonight betray a deeper interest in the scarab than you admit. We shall consider this carefully." He gestured to Mahmoud, who escorted Carver back to her tent, her protests fading into the night. Poirot remained, his mind racing. Carver's desperation was palpable, but was it the desperation of guilt or of fear? He returned to the scarab's tent, examining the box she had touched. No compartment existed, as he knew, but her frantic search suggested she feared what Grayson's journal might reveal. Perhaps evidence of her rivalry, or worse, her crime. The cyanide in the canteen, the clay on Grayson's cuff. Carver's chemical expertise all pointed to her. Yet Holt's obsession and Amir's resentment remained, shadows in the puzzle. Poirot conferred with Mahmoud in the tense dim light. "Inspector, Dr. Carver's actions tonight are a thread we must follow, but we must not neglect the others. Holt's fervor, Amir's silence, each plays a part. Tomorrow, we must examine Grayson's journal closely, for it may hold a truth we have overlooked." Mahmoud nodded, his fatigue tempered by resolve. "I'll have the journal brought to you at dawn, and I'll question the workers. Again, someone may have seen Carver near the canteen, or Holt, or Amir." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Bon, the trap has caught a moth, but whether it is the killer remains to be seen. The scarab's curse is a myth, but human greed and vengeance are real, and Hercule Poirot will uncover them." As he stepped into the night, the stars above seemed to watch, silent witnesses to a drama poised to unravel. Chapter 9: The Journal's Revelation. The dawn broke over the Valley of the Kings with a golden clarity, the first rays of sunlight piercing the morning mist that clung to the dunes, casting long shadows across the archaeological camp. Hercule Poirot, his suit as immaculate as ever, despite the desert's persistence, sat in the shade of a canvas canopy, Dr. Harold Grayson's journal open before him on a folding table. The leather-bound volume, its pages yellowed and cramped. With the archaeologist's meticulous script was a treasure trove of insights, not into the ancient past, but into the human passions that had led to murder. Poirot's gray cells hummed with purpose, sifting through the words for the clue that would illuminate the killer's path. Inspector Mahmoud joined him, his face drawn from a sleepless night, his notepad brimming with the worker's fragmented accounts. "Mr. Poirot," he said, setting down a cup of strong coffee, "the journal arrived from Grayson's tent this morning. The workers are still rattled, but I've pressed them for more details. Nothing new yet, only that Dr. Carver was seen near the tent at dawn, as before, and Holt was fussing over crates. Amir's movements remain vague." Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes never leaving the journal. "Mercy, Inspector. The workers' eyes are clouded by fear, but this journal, it speaks clearly, if we know how to listen." He turned a page, his fingers careful not to smudge the ink. Grayson's entries detailed the scarab's discovery, its hieroglyphs, and the logistical challenges of the dig, but Poirot sought something deeper, hint of the rivalries and resentments that simmered beneath the camp's surface. One entry, dated a week prior, caught his attention. "Carver is relentless, accusing me of stealing her research on the Third Dynasty seals. Her anger is palpable, but she underestimates my resolve. The scarab is mine, and I'll see it in London." Poirot's eyes narrowed, the words painting a vivid picture of a rivalry turned bitter. He read on, finding a cryptic note from 2 days before Grayson's death. "A betrayal close to the dig. Someone watches too closely. Must secure the scarab before it's taken." The ambiguity of betrayal intrigued him. Was it professional sabotage, or something more personal? He turned to Mahmoud, his voice low but sharp. "This journal, Inspector, reveals a rift. Dr. Carver's accusation of theft, she believed Grayson usurped her work. Such a grudge could fester into murder, Nan. And this betrayal, it suggests Grayson suspected someone near him, perhaps one of our trio." Mahmoud frowned, glancing at the journal. Carver's motive seemed strongest, especially after last night's trap. She was desperate to check that scarab box. But Holt's obsession with keeping the relic in Egypt, he could have seen Grayson's plans as a betrayal of his mission. And Amir, his resentment of foreigners could fit, though he's harder to pin down. Poirot nodded, his mind weaving the threads together. Persistent, each suspect is a piece of the mosaic. But the journal points most directly to Dr. Carver. We must learn more of her actions before Grayson's death. He flipped to an earlier entry, dated a month prior, when Grayson had secured funding for the dig. A marginal note mentioned Carver's fury at being sidelined, her own project delayed by the same benefactors. Her ambition was wounded, Poirot murmured. A wound that could drive a clever mind to poison. He closed the journal, his gaze drifting to the camp, where workers moved sluggishly, their fear of the curse undimmed. Dr. Carver's tent was visible, its flap open, revealing her bent over a table, scribbling furiously. Holt was near the tomb entrance, his monocle glinting as he inspected a crate, while Amir directed workers at the trenches, his lean figure a constant presence. Poirot's thoughts returned to the clay smudge on Grayson's cuff, a detail yet to be resolved. "Inspector," he said, "have you found any trace of that dark clay? It is not of this valley, and it may lead us to the killer's path." Mahmoud shook his head. "Not yet, Mr. Poirot. The workers searched the nearby sites, but the soil here is sandy, uniform. The clay could be from a secondary dig, perhaps one Grayson visited in secret. I'll have them look further afield today." Bon Poirot replied, his eyes bright. "The clay is a whisper from the crime, and we must hear it. But for now, let us focus on the journal's revelations. Dr. Carver's rivalry is clear, but we must confirm her opportunity." Monsieur Holt's entries are less damning. He appears only as a negotiator, pressing Grayson to relinquish the scarab to Cairo. Amir is mentioned but once, described as untrustworthy but indispensable. Curious, Nan. Grayson trusted him, yet suspected him. Mahmoud scribbled a note, his brow furrowed. Amir's silence bothers me, Mr. Poirot. He deflects, points to Carver and Holt, but offers nothing of himself. Could he have sabotaged Grayson to protest the dig? Poirot's lips curved slightly. A possibility, Inspector, but cyanide is a precise weapon, not the tool of a passionate outburst. Amir's resentment is deep, but his actions are controlled. We must learn if he had access to such a poison, perhaps through local contacts. He paused, his mind returning to Carver's midnight foray to the scarab's tent. Dr. Carver's desperation last night. She feared the journal's secrets, or perhaps sought to destroy them. We must confront her with this rivalry. Poirot rose, tucking the journal under his arm, and made his way to Carver's tent, Mahmoud trailing behind. Inside, Carver looked up from her notes, her green eyes wary as she registered Poirot's approach. Mr. Poirot, she said, her tone clipped. I trust you've found something more substantial than my curiosity last night. Poirot's mustache twitched, his voice smooth but unrelenting. Madame Carver, the journal of Dr. Grayson speaks of a rivalry, a wound, perhaps, that cut deeper than professional pride. You accused him of stealing your research, Nan, a charge that cost you funding, prestige, time. Such a loss could drive a brilliant mind to desperate measures. Carver's face paled, her hands clenching a pencil. That's no secret, she snapped. Grayson used my early findings on Third Dynasty seals to bolster his proposal. It was unethical, but I didn't kill him for it. My work will outlast his, with or without his death. Her voice trembled, a mix of anger and defiance. Poirot leaned closer, his eyes piercing. And yet, Madame, you were seen near his tent at dawn, and last night you sought the scarab's box, fearing a hidden truth. The journal mentions a betrayal. Did Grayson's theft betray you, enough to poison his canteen? Carver stood, her chair scraping the ground. I've told you, I spoke to him about surveys, nothing more. And last night, I was looking for notes, not evidence of murder. If you want betrayal, look to Holt. He was furious. Grayson wouldn't give up the scarab, or Amir, always muttering about foreigners desecrating his land. Poirot's gaze held hers, unyielding. Your passion, Madame, is noted, but so is your opportunity. The canteen, left unattended, was within your reach, and your knowledge of poisons is undeniable. He stepped back, his tone softening. We shall speak again, I think. As he and Mahmoud left the tent, Poirot's mind churned. Carver's denial was fierce, but her reaction to the journal's revelations betrayed a deeper fear. The clay smudge, the cyanide, the rivalry all pointed to her. Yet Holt's obsession and Amir's silence could not be ignored. Inspector Poirot said, we must gather the suspects tomorrow, lay out the evidence, and watch their faces. The journal has given us a motive, but the truth requires one final push. Mahmoud nodded, his resolve firm. I'll arrange it, Mr. Poirot, and I'll press the workers again about that. Clay, it's our only loose thread. Poirot's eyes gleamed, the scarab's image vivid in his mind. The thread will lead us, Inspector. The journal has spoken. And Hercule Poirot listens. Tomorrow, the killer's mask will slip. As the camp stirred under the rising sun, the truth felt closer, a shadow poised to step into the light. Chapter 10. The denouement. The sun hung high over the Valley of the Kings, its relentless glare bathing the archaeological camp in a stark light that seemed to expose every shadow. Yet the mystery of Dr. Harold Grayson's death clung stubbornly to the air. Hercule Poirot, his suit a defiant bastion of order amid the desert's chaos, stood in the main tent, where the golden scarab amulet rested in its wooden box, its hieroglyphs glinting like silent accusations. The tent was crowded with the camp's key figures. Dr. Evelyn Carver, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her green eyes wary. Reginald Holt, his monocle polished to a sheen, his fingers twitching nervously. And Amir, the local guide, his lean frame still, his dark eyes unreadable. Inspector Mahmoud flanked Poirot, his notepad worn from days of relentless inquiry. While a handful of workers lingered at the tent's edges, their whispers of curses now subdued by the Belgian detectives' commanding presence. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of the storm brewing within his gray cells. He had gathered the suspects here, in the heart of the camp, to unveil the truth woven from the threads of cyanide, clay, and concealed motives. The journal's revelations, the canteen's poison, and Carver's midnight foray to the scarab's tent had narrowed his focus. Yet the final piece of the puzzle required a performance, a denouement in the grand style of Hercule Poirot. "Mise Amos," he began, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the tent's stifling air. "We are gathered to lay bare the truth of Dr. Grayson's death. No curse, no ancient wrath, took his life. It was murder, deliberate and cunning, executed with a poison most swift cyanide, slipped into his canteen." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, noting Carver's tense posture, Holt's fidgeting, and Amir's impassive stare. "The question is not how, but who and why." He stepped toward the table, gesturing to the canteen, now safely in Mahmoud's custody, but vividly present in memory. This canteen, filled by Dr. Grayson at dawn, was tampered with before 9, when he took his fatal sip. The camp was busy, yes, but not so chaotic that a careful hand could not act unseen. 3 of you were near: Dr. Carver, Monsieur Holt, Monsieur Amir, each with motive, each with opportunity. Carver's voice cut in, sharp and defiant. "This is ridiculous, Mr. Poirot. I've told you, I was cataloging artifacts, not poisoning canteens. You have no proof." Holt nodded vigorously, his monocle glinting. "Exactly. I was with the crates, nowhere near his tent." "Look to Carver, she's the one with the grudge." Amir remained silent, his eyes fixed on Poirot, a flicker of curiosity. Breaking his stoic mask, Poirot raised a hand, silencing the protests. "Patience, Mise Amos. Let us examine the evidence, piece by piece, as Hercule Poirot does." He turned to Mahmoud, who held up the journal, its pages marked with Poirot's careful annotations. "Dr. Grayson's journal speaks of a rivalry, Madame Carver, a wound you carried, believing he stole your research on 3rd Dynasty seals. This theft cost you funding, prestige, a chance to shine, a powerful motive." Carver's face flushed, but her voice was steady. "I admitted the rivalry, but I didn't kill him. My work will outlast his, without resorting to murder." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, Madame, you were seen near his tent at dawn, speaking with him. You had access to the canteen, and your expertise in ancient compounds published in your papers includes knowledge of poisons like cyanide." He paused, letting the accusation settle. "Last night, you sought the scarab's box, fearing a hidden clue in Grayson's journal. Why, if you are innocent?" Carver's hands clenched, her composure fraying. "I was looking for notes, not evidence of murder. I wanted to understand his find, to protect my own work." "You're twisting this." Poirot turned to Holt, his tone measured but unrelenting. "Monsieur Holt, your obsession with the scarab is well documented. You argued with Grayson, desperate to keep it in Cairo. Your museum has resources, chemicals, perhaps, used in preservation. Cyanide is not unknown in such circles. Were you near the canteen, hoping to secure the relic by any means?" Holt's monocle fell, dangling from its chain as he sputtered. "I'm a curator, not a chemist. I was with the crates, as the workers said. I didn't touch his canteen, and I certainly didn't poison him. Carver's the one with the means and motive." Poirot's gaze shifted to Amir, whose silence was a presence in itself. And you, Monsieur Amir, speak of Grayson's disrespect for Egypt, his plundering of your heritage. You move through this camp like a shadow, seen yet unseen. Did you see your chance to punish a foreigner, to stage a curse that would mask your act? Amir's eyes met Poirot's, calm but defiant. I guide, I do not kill. Grayson's actions angered me, yes, but I had no poison, no reason to act. Look to those with access to such things, Carver Holt. Poirot's mustache curved, a sign of his mind closing the net. Let us consider the facts. Then, the canteen was poisoned between dawn and 9. Dr. Carver, you were near the tent at dawn, your rivalry, a burning ember. Monsieur Holt, your crates were close enough, your obsession a spur to action. Monsieur Amir, your movements are vague, your resentment a quiet flame. But only one of you had the means, the opportunity, and the motive aligned. He paced the tent, his small frame commanding every eye. The clay smudge on Grayson's cuff, a detail overlooked, points to a secondary site. But our searches found no such clay nearby. It is a clue, but not the key. The key is the canteen, and the journal's note of betrayal. Dr. Grayson suspected someone close, someone who could approach his tent without suspicion. He turned to Carver, his voice sharp as a blade. Madame Carver, you are that someone. Your dawn visit was no mere discussion of surveys. You slipped cyanide into the canteen, knowing Grayson's habits, knowing the curse would cloak your crime. Your expertise made the poison accessible. Your rivalry made it personal. Last night's trap revealed your fear, the fear that Grayson's journal held proof of your theft, your motive. Carver's face drained of color, her hands trembling. No, I didn't. I wouldn't. You have no proof, only guesses. Her voice cracked, her eyes darting to the others, seeking an ally. Poirot continued, relentless. The workers saw you near the tent. Madame, your chemical knowledge is undisputed. The journal's accusations of theft align with your desperation to check the scarab's box. You staged the curse, hoping superstition would shield you, but Hercule Poirot sees through such veils. Holt gasped, his monocle forgotten. It was her. I knew it. She hated Grayson. Amir's expression shifted, a faint nod suggesting agreement, or perhaps relief. Carver stood, her chair toppling. This is madness. I spoke to him, yes, but I didn't poison anything. Holt wanted the scarab. Amir hated Grayson's work. Why me? Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice held firm. Because, Madame, the evidence points only to you. Holt's obsession lacked the precision of this act. His movements were too far from the canteen, as workers confirmed. Amir's resentment was strong, but he had no access to cyanide, no moment alone with the canteen. You, however, had both. Your dawn visit, your knowledge, your motive, they aligned perfectly. Carver's shoulders slumped, her defiance crumbling. I couldn't let him ruin me, she whispered, tears welling. He stole my research, my chance. I slipped the cyanide in during our talk, just a pinch, thinking the curse would cover it. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her voice broke, and she sank back into her chair, her confession echoing in the silent tent. Mahmoud stepped forward, his cuffs ready. Dr. Carver, you're under arrest. The workers murmured, their fear of the curse giving way to awe at Poirot's revelation. Holt adjusted his monocle, stunned, while Amir's gaze softened, a hint of respect in his eyes. Poirot's voice was gentle now, almost mournful. Madame, ambition is a fire that warms or consumes. You chose the latter, and so justice must follow. As Mahmoud led Carver away, her head bowed, Poirot turned to the scarab, its golden glow undimmed by the tragedy. The truth, as always, had been a matter of human passions, not ancient curses, and Hercule Poirot had brought it to light. Chapter 11. The curse dispelled. The morning light swept across the Valley of the Kings with a gentle warmth, as if the desert itself sighed in relief at the unveiling of truth. The archaeological camp, once shadowed by whispers of a curse, stirred with renewed purpose, its workers moving with cautious vigor under the watchful eye of Inspector Mahmoud. Hercule Poirot stood near the main tent, his suit pristine despite the dust that swirled around him, his mustache a calm sentinel over a mind now at ease. Dr. Evelyn Carver's confession had shattered the myth of the scarab's curse, revealing a murder born of human ambition rather than divine wrath. The golden amulet, its hieroglyphs no longer ominous, rested in its wooden box, soon to be transported to the Cairo Museum under Reginald Holt's fervent care. Poirot's grey cells, though satisfied, remained vigilant, tying the final threads of the case. The cyanide in Grayson's canteen, the clay smudge on his cuff, Carver's bitter rivalry, all had converged in a tapestry of motive and opportunity, unraveled by Poirot's relentless logic. Yet as he surveyed the camp, he felt a pang of melancholy for the passions that drove such a brilliant mind to ruin. Mahmoud approached, his face lighter than it had been in days, his notepad tucked away. "Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with admiration, "you've done it again. Carver's confession has quieted the workers there digging again, no longer afraid of the curse. The scarab will go to Cairo, as Holt wanted. But one thing puzzles me still, the clay on Grayson's cuff. We never found its source." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of lingering curiosity. "The clay, Inspector, was a whisper we did not fully hear. It was not essential to the murder, but it suggests Grayson visited a site beyond this valley, perhaps in secret. A minor detail, but one that reminds us the desert keeps its secrets, even from Hercule Poirot." He smiled faintly, adjusting his hat. "No matter. The truth of the murder is clear, and that is enough." Amir approached, his lean frame moving with quiet grace, his dark eyes meeting Poirot's with a newfound respect. "Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice soft but steady, "you have brought peace to this place. The workers feared the scarab's wrath, but you showed it was a woman's hand, not a god's. I thank you, for my people and for the land." Poirot inclined his head, his tone warm. "Monsieur Amir, your silence was a challenge, but your truth was honest. You guarded your people's heritage, as is right. The scarab remains in Egypt, a small victory for you, Nan." Amir's lips curved slightly, a rare hint of a smile. "A victory, yes, but the land will always outlast our quarrels." He turned back to the workers, his presence a steady anchor in the camp's renewed rhythm. Holt emerged from the main tent, clutching a crate that held the scarab's box, his monocle gleaming with triumph. "Mr. Poirot," he called, his voice buoyant, "the museum will display this amulet with pride. No London vault for it now. You've done a great service, sir, exposing Carver's treachery." Poirot's mustache twitched, his gaze sharp but kind. "Monsieur Holt, your passion for the scarab is admirable, but guard it well, lest it ignite another's envy. The relic is safe, and so is justice." Holt nodded, his nervous energy softened by relief, and hurried off to oversee the crate's transport. Mahmoud lingered, his expression thoughtful. "Mr. Poirot, how did you know it was Carver?" Holt's obsession, Amir's resentment, they seemed just as likely. Poirot's eyes softened, his voice a gentle lecture. "It was a matter of alignment, Inspector. The cyanide required expertise. Carver's chemical knowledge was unmatched. Her dawn visit to Grayson's tent, confirmed by workers, gave her opportunity. The journal's revelation of her stolen research provided motive. Holt's fervor was real, but his movements were too distant, his access to poison less certain. Amir's resentment was deep, but he lacked the means in the moment. Carver's desperation, revealed in our trap, sealed her guilt. The human heart, it betrays itself in small ways. Her trembling hands, her midnight search, Mahmoud nodded, his admiration clear. You see what others miss, Mr. Poirot. The camp is calm now, the curse dispelled. What will you do next? Poirot adjusted his hat, his gaze drifting to the horizon, where the hills stood sentinel over Egypt's past. I shall return to Cairo, Inspector, and thence to quieter pursuits. But first, I must reflect on the lesson of this case. The curse, Mies Amos, is not in relics, but in the hearts of those who covet them. His voice carried a quiet weight, a warning to all who let ambition outstrip honor, as the workers resumed their tasks. The camp hummed with life, the scarab's shadow lifted. Poirot walked toward his waiting car, the desert stretching endlessly before him, its secrets no match for his relentless mind. The truth had been found, the guilty unmasked, and order restored, a triumph, as always, for Hercule Poirot. Chapter 12. Departure. The midday sun blazed over the Valley of the Kings, its light a relentless mirror reflecting the truths unearthed in the archaeological camp. Hercule Poirot stood beside a dusty motorcar, his straw hat tilted against the glare, his suit an unyielding bastion of elegance despite the desert's ceaseless assault. The camp bustled with renewed vigor behind him, workers hauling baskets of earth, their fears of the scarab's curse dispelled by the revelation of Dr. Evelyn Carver's guilt. The golden amulet, now secured in a crate under Reginald Holt's watchful eye, was bound for the Cairo Museum, its hieroglyphs no longer a harbinger of doom but a testament to history's enduring allure. Poirot's gray cells, satisfied with the resolution of the murder, hummed softly, savoring the order restored to this corner of the desert. Inspector Mahmoud approached, his broad face softened by relief, a rare smile breaking through his usual weariness. Mr. Poirot, he said, extending a hand, you've worked a miracle here. The workers are back at their tasks, Holt is crowing about his museum's prize, and even Amir seems at peace. Dr. Carver is in custody, awaiting trial in Cairo. Your reputation, it seems, is well earned. Poirot's mustache curved, his eyes bright with quiet pride. Mercy, Inspector. The reputation of Hercule Poirot is but a reflection of method, of the little gray cells applied to human folly. Dr. Carver's ambition was her undoing, and the truth, it always rises, like the Nile, after rain. He shook Mahmoud's hand, his grip firm yet refined. Mahmoud glanced toward the camp, where the tomb entrance loomed, its dark maw a reminder of the secrets it still held. One thing lingers, Mr. Poirot, the clay smudge on Grayson's cuff. We never found its source. Does it trouble you, leaving it unresolved? Poirot's lips twitched, a faint smile betraying his acceptance of the desert's mysteries. The clay, Inspector, is a whisper we could not fully hear. Perhaps Dr. Grayson ventured to a hidden site, a secret he took to his grave, but it was not the key to his murder. Carver's cyanide, her rivalry, her midnight search, these were the threads that wove the truth. Sometimes, a small mystery must remain, a nod to the desert's enigma. He turned to see Amir approaching, his lean frame moving with the grace of one born to this land. The guide's dark eyes held a warmth absent in their earlier encounters, a silent acknowledgement of Poirot's triumph. Mr. Poirot, Amir said, his voice low but clear, you have honored this place by finding truth where others saw only fear. The scarab stays in Egypt, and the workers no longer tremble. For this I am grateful. Poirot inclined his head, his tone warm. Monsieur Amir, your land is rich with stories, and you guard them well. The scarab is yours, as it should be. Hercule Poirot seeks only justice, and here it is done. Amir nodded, a flicker of a smile crossing his face before he turned back to the workers, his presence a steady anchor in their labor. Reginald Holt emerged from a tent, his monocle gleaming as he clutched a clipboard, his nervous energy replaced by a buoyant satisfaction. Mr. Poirot, he called, hurrying over. The scarab is packed, ready for Cairo. No London museum will claim it now, thanks to you. Carver's madness cost Grayson his life, but you've ensured Egypt's treasure stays home. Poirot's eyes twinkled, his voice gentle but firm. Monsieur Holt, guard that treasure with care, lest passion blinds you as it did another. The scarab is safe, and so is the truth. That is enough. Holt nodded, his fervor tempered by Poirot's words, and scurried off to oversee the crate's loading. Poirot turned to the motor car, where Khalil, his driver, waited patiently, the engine idling. The desert stretched before him, its vastness a canvas of secrets and silences, now pierced by the light of justice. He paused, his gaze lingering on the camp, the tents, the trenches, the workers moving with purpose. The case had tested him, the cyanide's precision, the clay's mystery, the suspect's hidden fires, but order had prevailed, as it always did under his watchful eye. Inspector, Poirot said, turning to Mahmoud one last time, you have my gratitude for your diligence. Keep watch over this valley, for its stories are many, and not all are as easily unraveled. Mahmoud smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. And you, Mr. Poirot, keep those gray cells sharp. Egypt may call you back one day. Poirot chuckled softly, adjusting his hat. Perhaps mon ami, but for now, Cairo awaits, and then a quieter life if such a thing exists for Hercule Poirot. He climbed into the car, the door closing with a soft thud, and as Khalil drove toward the horizon, the camp receded, a fleeting tableau of human drama against the timeless desert. The scarab's curse had been no match for Poirot's logic, its golden glow now a symbol of truth rather than terror. As the dunes rolled past, Poirot's mind rested, but only briefly. For the world was full of puzzles, and Hercule Poirot was ever ready to solve them.